Well, thank you for logging in and tuning in. I have Miss Carmichael that's going to start giving you some information about financial aid, okay?
Okay.
All right. Hi, Jasmine. I'm glad you joined us. I will get going with the presentation. And as we move through, if you have questions, if you want to put them in your Zoom chat box, we'll talk about them at the end. All right, Mrs. Allen, can you see the presentation screen?
I can, yes.
Great. Okay, as I'm sure Mrs. Allen has already told you, the Louisiana Department of Education asks that the class of 2021 submit the free application for Federal Student Aid, or the FAFSA, as a requirement for graduation this year. And this simply ensures that your money is ready and waiting for you when you do begin college in the fall. Now, college can be expensive, so we just want you to be aware of some of the costs of getting your post-secondary degree, and those costs do include equipment, books, and supplies. So, your notebooks and a computer if you need one, your textbooks, personal expenses like your phone bill, money to do your laundry since you're going to be on your own perhaps, fuel for your car or transportation, and then food purchases outside of your meal plan, room and board, which could include your dorm room or an apartment if you're planning to stay off campus. And if so, you might be required to pay your electricity, water, and gas bill. And then you'll need money for groceries. And then tuition and fees, which is the majority of your cost. But when you are looking at your college websites or talking to your admissions representatives and they give you a tuition price, just keep in mind that there are other fees associated with your academic year, and those are going to include your parking, library, technology fees, any athletic fees, and then campus transportation. But the good news is that financial aid is available from the federal government, the state government in the forms of the TOPS scholarship, your college or career school, and nonprofit and private organizations. Every year, the federal government provides more than $120 billion in student financial aid. And a lot of that does go unawarded. So we just want to make sure that yours is ready and waiting for you when you do begin. The types of federal student aid include the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans. Federal student aid grants themselves are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid. So you always want to accept any grant monies that you're offered by a college. The grant family includes Pell Grants, and those are for undergraduates with financial need, FSEOGs for undergraduates with exceptional financial need, service grants for students of military families who died defending the country following 9/11, and then the Teach Grant for students pursuing a teaching career. Now, the Federal Work Study Program provides part time jobs to help you pay for your college expenses. So, when you check yes, you're interested in federal work study when you complete the FAFSA, the financial aid offices at your colleges will consider you for that program. And any money you make while working on campus through the Federal Work Study Program will be paid directly to you to help you pay for your miscellaneous expenses. Now, we always encourage students to say yes on the FAFSA that you're interested in federal work study because it does not obligate you to accept any jobs, but it lets the financial aid office know that you're interested and that they could contact you if something becomes available. And federal work study jobs look great on your first professional resume. Now, let's talk about the loans for a moment. Nobody wants to have to take out loans, and we do encourage you to be very careful about it. But if you cannot pay for your academic year without a student loan, then they are a good investment. There are several types of student loans. I'll start with the subsidized. These loans are based on financial need. So if you do accept the subsidized loan, no interest is going to be charged on this type of loan until you graduate. Now, for the unsubsidized loan portion, almost everyone's eligible for this loan. However, only take what you need because interest does begin to accrue while you're in school. And you can pay that interest while you're in school, but be aware that it does accrue throughout your college career and then on throughout the life of the loan. So you can see that there is a difference between direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Always accept the sub first, and you can remember this by telling yourself the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that type of loan. You always want to accept the federal student loans before the private student loans because payments are not due until on this type of loan until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. Whereas on the private loans, payments probably will be required to be made while you're in school. The interest rate might be variable and it's often much higher. And they almost always require a cosigner, which means that you're going to have to ask your parent or another adult to become a part of that loan and help you pay that loan if you cannot do so. So, to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. All federal student aid and almost all institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. Now, this launched on October 1st and it does so every year. Student financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, so you are encouraged to submit your FAFSA as soon as possible. We've been told that over 1 million FAFSAs have already been submitted for next academic year. So get to the head of that line while the money's still available so you'll be offered the maximum award that you're eligible to receive. And remember to pay close attention to the FAFSA deadlines. Your college might have a deadline. There is a TOPS scholarship FAFSA deadline. Federal Student Aid has a FAFSA deadline, and your school district might have a deadline as well. So check with your counselor. Students and parents will begin the FAFSA process by collecting all of the documents needed to complete the form. And by doing this, you're going to greatly diminish the time you spend working on your FAFSA. So these documents include the student and parents' Social Security cards, the 2019 federal income tax returns for the student and parents if they filed one, W-2s, because there's information here that might not be found on your federal return, and then bank statements and records of investments. You'll begin by creating the Federal Student Aid ID because this allows the student and parents to identify themselves electronically when accessing the FAFSA. It's going to consist of a username and password that you will create. with your personal information. Each student and one of his parents should create the ID by visiting fsaid.ed.gov. Remember to use your personal email address to create your Federal Student Aid ID. Once school is over this year, your school email account could be disabled and Federal Student Aid would have no way to get in touch with you. And don't share information with your parent who's creating an ID. There is one issue that we've seen quite often where a student will use mom or dad's mobile phone number in their ID, perhaps as the alternate number, and that's going to cause both of you trouble electronically signing. Now, the FSA ID is your official electronic signature, and it's legally binding, so make sure nobody else has it. But keep it for yourself in a safe place because you'll need this ID every year that you're in college. If you don't have access to a computer, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app. It's called My Student Aid, and you can use it to submit your FAFSA on your mobile phone or any other mobile device that has internet access. Or you can complete the FAFSA using the web-based version at fafsa.gov. Now you'll want to begin the FAFSA by logging in with the student's FSA ID because the FAFSA is the student's application for Federal Student Aid. The parent ID is going to come into play later if the parent chooses to move their financial information, their tax information from the IRS into the FAFSA, and then his or her ID will be used to sign the student's FAFSA. The high school class of 2021 should complete the 2021-2022 FAFSA because that's the academic year that you're applying for financial aid. You'll notice that you have another choice here, and some students say, well, I'm in the 2020-2021 academic year now, and it's tempting to select that FAFSA. However, that is for students that are going to college this academic year. There are 8 sections in the FAFSA that should be completed before submitting, and those include the student demographics, where the student will be asked to provide a social security number, name, date of birth, email address, physical address, residency status, and gender. Next is the school selection, where you're required to provide the name of your high school and list the colleges that you want your FAFSA data to be sent to. You'll also list your housing plans on each of those campuses. The dependency status section will ask you to consider a list of 10 questions that will determine whether you're dependent or independent. And then we'll ask the number of dependents in your household. Now, parents' education is asked in this section, and sometimes parents wonder why they're being asked what their level of education is. But remember that there could be additional financial aid available for students of first generation college level. Next, you'll see the parent demographics, and this is where parents will be asked to provide their social security numbers, their names, and then their marital status, and they'll include their personal email address as well. Next, you'll move over into the parent and student financial sections, where you're going to be asked about your 2019 working wages, if you've received any federal benefits, and then you will report your savings and investment balances here. Now, it's important to note as you move through the FAFSA to always look up toward the top left-hand side and see whose information is being asked for. On this page, you'll see the blue ribbon that asks for student information. So you'll know that you're entering information for the correct person. And then it's almost time to be finishing up because you're being asked next to sign and submit the FAFSA. And this is where your FSA IDs will be used. Finally, you'll receive your confirmation that your FAFSA was successfully submitted. Now, as you move through the FAFSA, if you have a question about a question, look over to the right-hand side and there's a question mark. If you click there, you'll get more detail about that question. If that doesn't help, you can always have an online chat with a FAFSA representative. You can call Federal Student Aid, or you can call and talk to someone on Leela's FAFSA helpline. But for this session, I'm going to cover the most commonly asked FAFSA questions. The citizenship requirement. Students must be citizens or eligible non-citizens to complete a FAFSA. But if their parents are not, then they can always enter zeros in the space that the Social Security number is asked for. Young men between the ages of 18 and 26 must register with Federal Student Aid with Selective Service to receive any federal benefits. And because grants, work study, and student loans that are administered by Federal Student Aid are considered federal benefits, you must be registered to receive those. You can register within the FAFSA, so please do so if you haven't already. Now, only the colleges that you list on your FAFSA in the school selection section are going to consider you for student financial aid. They're not just going to send all of your personal and financial information out to all the colleges across the country. You have to give them permission to do that. So add all of the schools that you're considering, and you can add up to 10 at a time. Now, if you're planning to apply to more than 10 colleges, there are instructions on this page to explain that process. Now the dependency status section. You can see the list of 10 questions here, and I'll quickly go over them. Because if you can answer yes to just one of these questions, you're independent for FAFSA purposes and will not be required to provide parental information. Now remember, they're asking these questions of the students. And the first one is, will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents who will live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? So if you're going on to boot camp or to basic training, that is considered training and you're still considered a dependent student. At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a ward or dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? And the last question, are you an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, as I mentioned, if you cannot answer yes to one of these questions, you are considered dependent and you must provide parental information. Even if you file your own taxes and claim yourself, or you live on your own, you must still be able to answer yes to one of those prior questions to skip the parent section of the FAFSA. One of the most commonly asked questions that we receive is, which parents do I report on my FAFSA? And the answer to that is the parent or parents that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be listed on your FAFSA. Now, if you live with both of your biological parents, that's easy. You just list both of them. But if the parent you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months is separated, divorced, or was never married, then you should only list that biological parent on the FAFSA. Now, if that parent is now remarried, you must also report that parent's spouse. So, in other words, Federal Student Aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. If you're identified as a dependent student, but you cannot convince your parents to provide their information on the FAFSA, you can submit it saying that you're unable to provide that info, but please note that you are only going to be considered for student loans if you submit your FAFSA without your parents' information. If this is the case that you're in, you can always contact the college's financial aid office. They will put you in an appeal, put you in the appeal process, and they'll work with you individually to see if you can come up with some other sort of remedy for that issue. To make the FAFSA processing a lot quicker, more accurate, and a lot easier to go through, you can link your tax information into the FAFSA and it will be automatically populated that way. You do want to make sure that you have your 2019 income tax return with you as you're going through this process because you're going to be asked some specific questions from that tax return. Once you do link to the IRS from the FAFSA, you'll see that here you are in their website, and you will want to check over all the information, make sure it's correct, add anything that's missing. And it's important to know that you must provide the street address, city and state, and zip exactly as it's printed on your return. You might have moved, or your tax preparer could have misspelled your name, but please use the information that was reported to the IRS for that 2019 tax year. And then you're almost finished. But before you submit your FAFSA, it's important to review the student aid report. Now, this is a list of the questions you were asked on the FAFSA and your answers to those questions. And this is the time to make sure that all of your information is correct before you submit it and it goes out to all of your colleges. Here we are on the Sign and Submit page, and you see that you're asked to provide a student signature, and that's your electronic signature, the FSA ID, and then the parent is asked to provide a signature as well. So make sure you have those IDs created before you start your FAFSA. Once you do submit, you will automatically see the confirmation page pop up. Now, although you are going to receive an email and I'm letting you know that your FAFSA was successfully submitted, this is the only time you're going to see this much detail. So please print this confirmation page or do a screenshot and keep it because you'll find out what's going to happen next. You'll see the steps that you need to take to complete the financial aid process. You'll see a list of the colleges that will receive your FAFSA data. You can review your financial aid estimates. And I'm going to emphasize estimates because everybody gets excited when they see the dollar amounts. But it's important to note that your college financial aid office, not Federal Student Aid, is going to be determining the amount of your aid. Now, if you do begin the FAFSA without completing it, you have 45 days to go ahead and make your entries and get that submitted, or the FAFSA will be wiped clean, and you will have to begin again after that 45-day period. Also, if Federal Student Aid has questions about the information you've submitted, they will email the student directly and ask them to make those changes. Now, if you want to add a school later, or you want to change your contact information, or make any changes that your college has asked you to make on your FAFSA, simply log back in, use your student FSA ID to access your FAFSA, and then make those specific changes. I always think it's a good idea to review all the questions and your answers to the FAFSA at this time. But the important thing to remember is that if you make a FAFSA correction, you must sign with your FSA ID and submit the FAFSA again. Once your FAFSA is fully processed, then it is shared with the colleges that you've listed. And at that time, each college will begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive. If your family's financial situation has changed since 2019, and I know we're going to see a lot of this year, you can contact your financial aid office and let them know about your situation. Perhaps your parents have lost jobs, um, they've had a reduction in worked hours. There could have been some unexpected medical expenses, but either way, the financial aid office can work with you independently to perhaps identify some more free dollars available to help you finish up your academic year. But remember that it's your responsibility to contact them. They're not going to contact you directly. Now they are going to be working on determining the net price for your academic year. And they're going to do this by considering their cost of attendance and subtracting any grants or scholarships that you're eligible to receive. Now that net price can be paid by you in cash or by accepting student loans. Your student financial aid offer is going to reflect, as I mentioned, the school's cost of attendance, and then any grants, scholarships, work study, and student loans that they can offer you. So be sure you're reading over your award offers carefully. And also know that a separate financial aid offer is going to come from each college. So that way, if cost is your number one priority, you can lay out those offers and you can determine what's the best fit for you. But either way, you are going to want to accept your financial aid in this order. Your grants and scholarships, because these are gift aid and they don't have to be repaid. Next, federal work study, because you've earned this money and you don't have to pay it back. And then your student loans, because this money is borrowed and you will be required to repay it with interest. Now, the student financial aid process is explained in greater detail in Leela's FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2021. And it's free for all Louisiana high school seniors. So ask your counselor about that or email me directly and I'll provide my contact information at the end of the presentation and I'll be happy to send this guide on to you. And I'll also include our checklist for college planning to help you keep on track this year. Now, let's talk about scholarships for just a moment. I know that this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid, and there are thousands of scholarships out there. They could be offered by your colleges, by your parents' employers, religious groups, or social organizations. Some scholarships are merit-based, so they could be based on your academic achievement or a special talent or interest that you have. And then other scholarships are based on financial need. But either way, These scholarships are going to reduce the cost of your education and therefore reduce your student loan debt. So make sure that you're finding these scholarships. You can talk to your counselor about it, your high school counselor, or your financial aid counselor, or your admissions representative. They see a lot of scholarship dollars coming into their schools, so make sure you're checking with them as well. This year, Leela has a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship, and this is for all Louisiana high school students who've completed their FAFSA. It's a $1,000 award, and you can find out the details at leela.org. Now, we also have a Choose Louisiana scholarship for Louisiana college students. So once you're in college, you'll be able to apply for that as well. For students and parents who need additional help paying for their college expenses, who've exhausted all their opportunity for the federal and state dollars and scholarships, Leela does administer a nonprofit student loan program. It's called Leela Choice, and you can find out more about that at leelachoice.org. So now it's time to answer any questions that you might have. If you've used the Zoom chat box, I'm going to check it right now and see what else we have to discuss. But I do want to make sure that you're jotting down my phone number and also email address. If you need individual assistance as you're completing your FAFSA, you are welcome to give me a call or send me an email. Now, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to edit this video and post it on our YouTube page. So if you want to go back at any time and take a look at it, it'll be there, and I'll send a link onto your counselor as well. But you can visit our YouTube page. It's called Ask Leela. So here we go with the questions. Okay, I see, Jasmine, you were having just a bit of trouble with the presentation on that one screen, so I'm glad that that got worked out. Have you been able to start your FAFSA, or have you finished any of your admissions applications? I'd love to hear about that. I bet you've gotten an early. Go ahead.
Me and my mama have already did our FSA ID, and I have already did the FAFSA account.
That is fantastic. Mrs. Allen, what do you think about that?
Awesome, awesome.
That is great. Did you have any trouble with it?
I didn't know about the work study at first.
Did you select, you weren't sure? You didn't know if you were interested? Because you can always go back into your FAFSA and you can change the answer to that question if you'd like and resubmit it so your colleges know you're interested.
I selected, I don't know, but now I'll change to yes.
Okay, perfect. Also, Jasmine, don't forget to go to and apply for that Ms. Carmichael, the $1,000 scholarship once she finished her FAFSA.
Yes, at leela.org.
Leela.org.
And Jasmine, if you want to email me directly, I'll send you a link so you can get directly to that scholarship application. Let me see if I can put my email address in the chat box.
I'm actually posting it on our Canvas page right as we speak.
Good.
And also, Jasmine, under the Canvas page, under raw, I'm getting tongue tied. On the senior Canvas page, if you look under pages, the FAFSA completion guide, which you have already completed, is on there, as well as the steps on what you need to do for the rest of your senior year, the FAFSA completion guide, and well,
I saw it.
You did? Okay, great. Awesome. Awesome. So, Ms. Carmichael, as you're sending me things, I've been posting as well. Is trying to get the information out to the kids to help them as much as possible. So I do greatly appreciate your help.
You are very welcome. I'm always here to help. So if you need me in the future, or Jasmine, if you just want to chat about anything, I know Mrs. Allen is always there for you. And I'm available to help you through the financial aid process as well. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. And I think Jasmine needs some kind of special recognition for being with us tonight.
Absolutely. I already made a note in my phone so I can make sure I get something for her. Definitely some special recognition. I surely do appreciate you taking out your time, Jasmine, and logging in.
All right, ladies.
Welcome.
Well, good night.
Thank you.
You have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Ms. Carmichael.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.